Hey guys, back again with another video. I know it's been a long time. Geez, I feel like it's been weeks since I've done a video. It's strange. I just haven't had the motivation to do them lately, and my time to do them is pretty limited to actually sit down and get a video done. But I definitely wanted to get this video out there because it's a game I'd been anticipating for a while, and that is of course Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, the new From Software game, and game got fantastic reviews. It's been selling pretty well from what I've seen as well. Now, I actually avoided a lot of like footage leading up to this game and a lot of information about it because I kind of wanted to go in blind in a way. I had read some things. A lot of people were kind of saying that it really isn't much like the Souls games. Like it does have some elements to like common shared elements to it, but it's very much its own thing. And after finally finishing this game and actually even getting the platinum trophy in this game, I can definitely see that. As far like Bloodborne, was a fairly different game from the Souls series, but that had definitely had a lot more in common with them than this does. This, in a lot of ways, more feels like a character action game than a action RPG. The RPG elements have definitely been heavily reduced in this game, and this game is far more focused on boss fights and the actual combat, and then stealth, and using stealth to kind of get through the environments. And we'll get to that when we talk about the gameplay here. There's a lot to cover with this game, and of course the Souls series being my favorite series of all time. I was highly anticipating this game, and there's a lot to say about it. So before we get into the actual review impressions video, my overall thoughts on it. I like it. I like it quite a bit. In fact, it's one of my favorite games of this year. In fact, it's right behind Resident Evil 2 for me so far. But at the same time, it's weird. It lacks a lot of what I do love about the Souls games. Why those games are some of my favorites of all time. And I'm playing Dark Souls 3 again. After finishing this game, I wanted to get back into the Souls games again because I was just feeling in the mood for them. And I'm on New Game Plus of Dark Souls 3, and I actually prefer that game much more to Sekiro. And that was always kind of like my least favorite Souls game for some reason. I think it was more probably burnt out by when it came out, which is why I wasn't too hot on it when it came out. If you guys will remember, but I actually much prefer that game to this. I think that game is more to my tastes. But the Sekiro is still a fantastic game. I still think it's well worth playing if you know what you're getting into. This game is fucking hard. At least on the first playthrough. It's one of those games where, actually, like the Souls games, the New Game Plus is actually way easier, and a lot of the bosses that took me multiple attempts on the first playthrough took me only one or two on the second playthrough. But there's also a reason why I found this game probably a lot more difficult than a lot of other people. We'll get to that in the actual gameplay. But let's start with story and I guess lore and stuff like that. Not too much to say here because honestly I wasn't totally invested. So basically you're a samurai in the Sengoku period of Japan, and it's kind of a revenge tale. This clan has kind of kidnapped your lord, and you kind of gotta get him back, and you gotta take revenge on this warring clan. There's a lot of clans in this game. There is a lot of lore to it. And the main hook with this game is, and right near the beginning, this samurai called Genoshiro kind of hacks off your arm, and you get this prosthetic tool to kind of give you different upgrades, and that kind of plays a part in the story. I gotta say, I don't know, it's weird. The way this game tells its story is maybe a little bit different than the Souls games. There are a lot more cutscenes this time around, a lot more dialogue, a lot more exposition, but there definitely is a lot of mystery to it, and it can be, like the Souls games, it can be confusing to kind of understand what's going on. A lot of the endings in this game, I got all the endings, I don't think any of them made much sense to me. I don't know, it's just, I found it hard to be invested with the story here, but at the same time, like the Souls games, it's not super intrusive. I say there's a lot more cutscenes, but it's really not that much, and it's, but most of this game, you're kind of talking to NPCs, and that's how you get a lot of your lore. One of the more interesting things with the game, I thought, was Dragon Rot, where basically every time you die, this dragon rot disease kind of spreads throughout the world, and characters start to get sick, like NPCs that you kind of find. And this is a weird mechanic where it actually doesn't mean that much. Originally, I think in development, the certain NPCs were actually going to die if Dragon Rot got too bad. But I think that probably might have pissed off a lot of people, and you could easily like fuck up your game in a lot of ways. So they kind of reversed that. And it just basically means that you can't do certain NPC quest lines if they've been infected with the Dragon Rot too much. And then you get items later in the game that kind of basically gets rid of Dragon Rot entirely, and there's almost like an infinite supply of these items. So it was I found it kind of interesting from a storyline perspective, but as far as gameplay goes and mechanic wise, I think it's kind of undercooked in some ways. But it was kind of sort of like kind of interesting, and I think the NPC quest lines are probably the more intriguing aspect of this game as far as like story goes. Like with the Souls games, there's a lot of mysterious characters, a lot of obscure ways to kind of progress their quest lines, and a lot of the ways they progress is really cool. Again, this game is like filled with secrets, and I love that. I've always loved that in these games, and Sekiro's no different. So that's kind of the part of the story and the lore that I thought was kind of interesting. But the rest of it, I mean, I'm not really into samurai stuff all that much, so that might have been a factor as to why I didn't get so invested in this game. But even like the Souls games, I find I wasn't super invested. In fact, the original Dark Souls is the only one where I actually really got into the lore and the character quest lines and stuff like that, because I think it got a little bit too much with Dark Souls 2 and especially 3, which really hammers in like the fan service. Like it's actually kind of crazy how much fan service is in Dark Souls 3. But yeah, Sekiro, I'll be honest, the story lore, it didn't do much for me. It just wasn't interesting to me. The gameplay is the part of this game that kept me going. So gameplay, I mean, I guess we got to start with like how, like, kind of, I know a lot of people are kind of like saying, oh, don't compare this to Souls games, it's its own thing. But I mean, this is what they've been doing for a long time now, and it's hard to kind of play the game and not kind of make those comparisons. But like I was saying in the beginning, this is more a character action game. So, geez, there's a lot to cover here. I guess where should we actually start? There's, I think, two distinct parts of this game. There is the stealth-based exploration, similar to a Souls game, where you have, they're called, what were they called again? Sculptor's Idols, I think. So this is your bonfire, where you can kind of warp between them, and this is, and these are your checkpoints, essentially. When you die, all the enemies get reset, and actually one of the, I guess we should talk about this first. This is one of the differences as well. Souls are gone this time around. There's two different currencies essentially in Sekiro. One is money, sen they call it, and then skill points. So basically, when you're killing enemies, you'll gather skill points and bosses skill points and money. And when you die, you'll immediately lose half of your money. And half of your skill points too, I'm pretty sure. I feel like skill points might be a little less than half, though, I want to say. I am a little hazy on that. But essentially, money, you basically buy things at shops, and that's about it. Money in this game is kind of a weird thing. It's very useful in the beginning of the game, like the first half of the game, because a lot of shopkeepers will have really useful items and things like that. But towards the end of the game, you actually end up getting so much money, and there's like these coin purse items that are all over the place, that money becomes kind of useless after a certain point. Skill points are really the big thing in this game. And you kind of have level ups in a way, where once you get enough skill points, you gain a skill level. And basically you have like a skill tree in this game, like with a lot of games, and each skill kind of costs a different amount of skill points, and to unlock different skills you have to unlock previous skills, and there's different like charts, there's different like skill grids essentially, and basically once you get a skill point, that skill point you keep. So if you die right after getting one skill point, you're going to lose all your experience, like after that skill point, essentially. So you know, it's not, everything's not gone, but if you're like really close to getting to a skill point and you die, then you lose like half of your skill point. So you got to get your skill point bar up again. So already this is a pretty big difference from the Souls games. And there's no actual leveling up. So you're not. I mean, you can increase your stats, but it's done a bit differently in this game. So you're not like using sen or skill points to level up your attack power or anything like. Oh, okay. Well, actually, you can increase your attack power way late in the game with a certain item. But honestly, it's kind of not worth it at all. And this, actually, already I'm going to get into one of my big issues with this game, and that's the skill points in general and how stingy they are with your skill point gains. It takes forever to get skill points in this game. And a lot of the late game skills cost like 5 or 6 skill points, and it just takes forever to get there. In fact, it's so much so that one of the trophies in this game is to get all the skills in the game. And the only way to actually effectively do that is to grind for like 10 hours on these like same 5 enemies at this one checkpoint over and over and over again, because the skill point gain in this game is so low that even if you were to do like 4 different playthroughs, because it kind of increases on every new game plus, you get more skill points, it's still not nowhere near enough to get all the skills. So it's kind of balanced in a pretty lousy way, and it just makes it really grindy if you want to get all the skills, or if there's a certain skill that you really want that costs like a ton of skill points. So I really wasn't a fan of that. And the skills themselves, a lot of them I found honestly kind of useless. There's a lot of them, but there's not too many useful ones. Like the Makari counter is amazing, and then some of the ones that allow you to increase your healing effectiveness are pretty good. The high monk ability was really good. The double Ishimongi is really good as well. There's a couple skills here and there, but a lot of them just I found like just weren't useful in combat. Like it was just far more effective to just use your standard attacks. A lot of them just left you open for too long. So that's another thing about the skill system that I wasn't too into. But yeah, it's fairly different. The other thing with money that you can upgrade, I guess I'm basically kind of covering like the customization here, is the prosthetic tool. So the prosthetic tool is a big component of this game. And essentially, you can equip 3 at one time and kind of alternate between them. And also, like with the Souls games, you got like consumable items that you can use. That's a very similar thing. But these prosthetic tools, basically, you can get a bunch of them throughout the game. One of the fun things in this game is finding new ones in the environments. And that's that sense of discovery that the Souls games have is definitely still here in Sekiro. I'll talk a little about that a little bit more in a bit here. But basically, the prosthetic tools, there's a bunch of different ones. There might be a flame vent one that allows you kind of shoot fire from your hand. There's like a whistle that you can use to kind of distract enemies. There's consumable items that let you do that too, which is cool. Which leads into the stealth that I'll talk about a bit here as well. There's a bunch of them. There's like at least like 10 different prosthetic tools, and you can use the money to upgrade these. But you also need upgrade materials that you'll find throughout the environments as well. And the prosthetic tools seem like a cool idea at first, and it's fun experimenting with them and upgrading them in that first playthrough. But towards the end of the game, I started to realize that most of them were honestly really useless. There's a few of them that are good in very specific situations, like the fire one, for example. For a certain boss, it's very effective. But there's one prosthetic tool that is far and above way better than any of the other tools in the game, and that's the Shinobi Firecracker. And this thing is ridiculous, where every single enemy and boss in the game, I don't think there's a single boss in this game that doesn't get stunned by it, but basically you just press R2 and you do this quick Firecracker flash, and they get stunned for a little bit, leaving them open for some attacks. And honestly, like, this is the only thing I would use throughout the entire game, because it was just so damn effective compared to everything else. And I don't know, I think that's a bit of a problem. It really kind of discourages experimentation with the other tools when one of them is so much better than the others. It was kind of crazy. And then a lot of the upgrades that you'll get for these tools I didn't find were very useful either. And then another thing with the tools is that it costs spirit emblems. And this, I don't know if I like spirit emblems so much. It was never a huge deal for me. They're the kind of, you basically find these spirit emblems throughout the environments and then killing enemies. and you can have at first I think like 20 or 15, actually maybe 12 or something like that at one time. And to use prosthetic tools, it costs spirit emblems, and when you're out of spirit emblems, you can't use the tools anymore. And so yeah, it's basically, it almost reminds me of like blood vials from Bloodborne, where there's things you find in the environment. There's no way to like rest at an idol and then they just replenish, which it. I don't know if I would do that or not, because I never actually ran out of spirit emblems in this game. I always had enough, and towards the end of the game, I had like 999 in my storage box, because you can buy them at one of these idols with Sen. And like I was saying, you get enough money later in the game that you can buy like everything. So I don't know. I don't know if I would change that exactly, but I've heard a lot of people complaining about spirit emblems kind of discouraging experimentation with the tools as well. And I can definitely agree with that. Even though it didn't affect me so much because I just never really ran out of them. But yeah, the firecracker is just so much better than the rest of them that I don't know if the prosthetic tools are really like an amazing addition to the game. Like I feel like it would, again, like some of the other things in this game, it feels a little undercooked, like maybe like the dragon rot mechanic, essentially. But anyways, kind of coming around, I guess I should talk about how you increase your stats. So there's two different stats that you're kind of increasing. One is attack power, and attack power, the only way to increase this is to get memory items from the main bosses in the game. And you use these memory items at the Sculptor's Idol, and you increase your attack power by 1. And other than that, the only other way is this item that you get way late in the game, and it costs 5 skill points to increase your attack power, which, again, by that point in the game, it takes so long to get 5 skill points that it's not worth it. You might as well use like skill points to actually get skills, some of the more useful skills. Although, honestly, most of the skills aren't that good anyways, so maybe attack power was like this thing that you would want to go for. I didn't go for it because I was going for the Platinum Trophy, and those 5 skill points, I needed those to get all the skills in the game. So I didn't really use that attack power item that much. But if you don't care about trophies, it might be a worthwhile investment at times, maybe. But I don't know. I feel like attack power is one of those things where you don't really actually notice it that much, like the increases, because the game is just so hard. But the other thing you increase is vitality, your health, and then posture, which we'll get into posture when we talk about the combat here. And to do that, you basically have to get this prayer bead item, and you need 4 of them. And this reminds me of Zelda, like heart pieces. Once you get 4 of them, then it combines into 1, and then your health and your vitality and your posture increase. And to get these prayer bead items, there's a few scattered throughout the environments, but most of them are from the mini bosses that you'll find. And there's a ton of mini bosses in this game. Like, holy shit. Like, absolutely crazy how many of them there are in this game. In fact, this game can feel like a boss rush at times, but that's where you'll get your prayer beads. So always worthwhile to kill the mini bosses that you find. And that's about it for as far as upgrades for your character. So yeah, it's very light RPG elements, but it's not like a Souls game where you're constantly leveling up your character. You're not, there's no weapons or armor in this game that you're finding to increase your stats. You're not using your Sen or your skill points to increase your stats. There's no builds here. You're basically going to be playing this game pretty similarly to every other person that plays Sekiro. So it's a lot more rigid. So I honestly like to consider it a character action game. It's not, it's a lot far more rigid than the Souls games. And this is one of those preference things. And this is one of the reasons why I prefer the Souls games. That's what I love about those games. I love the build variety. I love being able to play completely different from another player. I love upgrading my character and what armor I want to use, what weapons do I want to use, do I want to go magic, do I want to what kind of magic abilities do I want to use. There's far more options available to you in the Souls games, and the more defensive combat in those games, I do prefer playing Dark Souls 3 again, especially now, as opposed to more aggressive combat in this game. But I mentioned earlier, this game kind of has like 2 components to it, the exploration and then the combat. We'll talk about exploration first, I think, because combat, there's a lot to talk about. So exploration is handled fairly similarly to the Souls games. Like I said before, you have those bonfires that you're kind of going between. Now, this game is pretty linear. It might be one of the more linear games. It's probably on par with Dark Souls 3, I would say. There's really only ever 2 to 3, sometimes there can be 3, different paths you can be going on. And they end pretty quickly. There's not actually a lot of locations to this game. And that's one of the big bummers with this game I found. And the locations are pretty short compared to a Souls game. very short actually, and it's most of these environments are boss fights. Like most of them are just mini boss after mini boss, but you do have some exploration as well. One of the cool things that this game's added is the grapple hook, where you can kind of grapple to different parts of the environment. So there's a lot more verticality to these environments than the Souls games have had in the past. And I thought that was really cool. I think that added a lot to the game, especially as far as the stealth goes. Well, I guess we'll talk about the stealth here because this game was apparently originally a Tenchu game, so it can kind of feel like that at times. So you can stealth kill enemies in this game. You can crouch in this game. You can sneak around, and you know the enemies kind of have like this sort of a cone type thing above their head where if you're kind of if they're kind of searching for you, it's like yellow and it kind of fills up this little bar essentially. And that means they're kind of searching for you. If it fills to red, it means they're aware of your location, and they'll start really, hounding you down. And so you can kind of, if enemies like catch you essentially in this game, you can kind of run away. Surprisingly, you can run away. The Souls games, the enemies would like chase you forever, and the enemies the levels were a lot less open ended in the Souls games. There's like a lot more corridors and things like that. So it was hard to run away from enemies a lot in the Souls games. But in this game, you can run away like way before, and eventually they'll lose track of you, and they'll go back to their routine or their patrol essentially. So you're not immediately fucked with the stealth in this game, which is actually one of the reasons why this is like one of the few stealth games I've really loved. So you can kind of sneak around, you can stealth kill enemies and kill them one hit, which is weird for a game from Software to feel, even though they've done Tenchu games in the past. And so you can grapple around too to kind of get away from enemies, and the environment's just really wide open, and there's a ton of enemies, and the verticality just makes stealth really engaging. Now the AI is not like amazing for the stealth. There's a lot of times where enemies really should see you and they just don't. And the stealth is actually pretty easy in this game. And it's one of the things that makes exploration a lot less tense than the Souls games. Like, I'm playing Dark Souls 3 right now, and I forgot how crazy like the level design is in those games, how tense it can be. There's so many times where you're out of Estus, and you could die at any moment, and enemies are like super aggressive. There's tons of them. There's so many ways to go. You're just like, oh shit, when am I going to get to this next bonfire? Can I get there? I might die. And those feelings of tension just aren't there in Sekiro. The idols are pretty generous in this game, and they kind of need to be because the bosses are so hard in this game. They really do need the idols to be right in front of it, like every single boss in the game. And for the most part, they actually stick to that, which I actually do appreciate. I think that was a smart choice for this game. But I gotta say, because the stealth is so easy to pull off, the actual levels in this game end up being really easy, actually. Like, I rarely felt like I was going to actually die before I reached the next idol. And the normal enemies in this game are also, as far as combat goes, far easier than shoot, I'm blanking here. They're far easier than the actual like enemies in previous games as well, like the Souls games. So the exploration is still fun. Like, there's multiple ways to go, and there's a good sense of discovery here as well. Like, there's, like I said, all these crazy NPCs with these weird quest lines, so many different hidden paths and optional areas for you to tackle. And it's really exciting when you find different items. But at the same time, it's a little bit more neutered compared to the Souls games because those games had so many more options. I feel that the exploration was more exciting in those games. It just was. And the levels are so short here. Before you know it, you're already going to be at a mini-boss. And that brings me to one of the other things about this game that I'm not crazy about. In line with it being more of a character action game, this game can feel like a boss rush at times. There's a lot of these levels where it's just mini-boss after mini-boss. You'll explore for like 5 minutes, and already you'll find yourself at another mini-boss. And so it can feel like a boss rush at times, and it can get a little tiresome, especially when you consider the fact that this game, well, we'll talk about one of the big problems of this game. I think this is probably one of the major issues I have with it, and that's the recycled content. Because, I mean, not only this game is extremely short compared to the Souls games as well, this game is probably maybe only like a 30-hour game on your first playthrough. The mini-bosses, they recycle a lot. Like some of the early mini-bosses you fight again later in the game. There's even a certain mini-boss you fight 3 fucking times. And it's like, come on, guys. You could have been a little more, like, a little more creative and come up with a new mini boss. Like you don't have to use the same one 3 times. Like there's just multiple bosses in this game that they reuse, and they're really not much different than the previous fights. So that was definitely a bummer. That was especially late in the game. It just becomes a little less exciting when every single mini boss you come across is just a recycled one from earlier. And then some of the locations too can be a little like lacking, like because they're like some of the locations are like really beautiful. Now another thing is that kind of the variety with this game. A lot of this game is just snowy like village type environments, like Sengoku period type village environments. It doesn't have the variety of a Souls games, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense with this setting. They can't go too crazy. But there are definitely some like fantasy elements to this. This isn't like a super realistic game or anything like that. But some of the later environments look amazing. Like there's one environment way late in the game that's fantastic to look at, and the level design is really cool as well. It felt like a Souls game to me. And then just as I was getting into it, just as I was like really like, oh man, this is great, it's over. The environment's done. In fact, that it was like the last environment in the game. So at that point, the game was over. So I was like, I don't know. It's a bit of a bummer. Some of these environments, they're just too short. But it is cool that there's a lot of connecting paths to different areas, and there's definitely those moments in this game where you're like, where the fuck am I? Like I'm so lost. Like, and those are my favorite moments in Souls games. I've been having it with Dark Souls 3 as well, although far more often than that game. And it's just one of my favorite moments in these games where you're just constantly exploring, and it just a certain path leads to like this whole new environment, and then you're in this new environment, and it leads to this other new environment, and it's just like I don't know, it's this great feeling where you're just like, oh shit, like where am I right now? This is crazy. But those kind of moments are kind of few and far between in Sekiro, and it was, I don't know, it's a little bit of a bummer, but anyway, so that's like one of the main components of the game. And as far as like stealth goes, there's these thing called death blows, and this is essentially your stealth kill. So in fact, every regular enemy in the game can be stealth killed as long as they don't see you, and they'll die one hit, which is cool. But the mini bosses do not die one hit. So a lot of the mini bosses, in fact, pretty much most of them, will have 2 death blow counters, is what they call it. So essentially, they'll have 2 health bars, and once you take out the first health bar, they'll basically be stunned, and a little red circle will come on the character, and then you can press R1 to do like a death blow. And it basically gets rid of their health bar, and then they have another health bar, and then you take out that, and then they're dead. It's cool where a lot of the mini bosses, you can actually stealth kill them to take off that first health bar immediately. And this is really cool. And one of the fun things about this game was coming across a mini boss and then thinking to yourself, okay, how can I death blow this mini boss, or can I even? And it was really fun, kind of figuring out different routes to kind of death blow these mini bosses. But some of them you just can't, no matter what. But it is kind of interesting that a lot of players online have found little tricks that you can do to actually stealth blow or death blow mini bosses that aren't meant to be death blowed, which is pretty cool. I feel like they might fix that in the game. Another thing too with healing, like there's consumable healing items, but there's also the healing gourd, which is essentially your Estus flask, and you can upgrade that throughout the game as well. So that's a cool thing I liked to see. Anyways, so yeah, a lot of these mini bosses can be actually stealth killed, which is kind of cool. I really did love that. But the main bosses, they cannot, at least for the most part. There's some where you can use kind of like little glitchy methods to kind of death blow, which is kind of interesting. But the main bosses, no, you have to go through all their health bars, and this is where I think Sekiro ends up being a lot harder than the Souls games. Most bosses in this game have 2 or 3 health bars. In fact, some of them have 4. And you know, these health bars, because the bosses block so much, that it ends up taking a long time to kill them too. And because the battles can end up, most of the battles in this game end up being battles of attrition, that's where I found the difficulty really came from. Dark Souls 3, I'm playing it, it's like all these bosses are going down super fast because they only have 1 health bar, and you can end up doing a lot of damage to them if you have the proper weakness and you've been properly upgrading your character. But Sekiro, I find it's kind of gated in a way. You're never going to be able to get really that much more like healing beads or attack power at certain points. There's a lot of points in this game where you'll just be stuck at 1 or 2 bosses, and it's the only way to progress, and there'll be no way to upgrade your character. So you just have to get good. You have to just fucking, keep at it, and eventually you'll do it. There's no way to, no way to kind of make things easier for yourself. This game doesn't have the built-in easy mode of a Souls game where you can like go back, grind souls to upgrade your character, or use co-op. There's no multiplayer in Sekiro, which is one of the other major things. This is a single player game, so you can't use the easy mode summoning in this. You gotta, you gotta just fucking, you just gotta get good, learn these enemies, and learn these bosses, and eventually prevail. Okay, so I guess I have to talk about. We'll get to the combat now, but the other thing I wanted to mention about this game, while we're talking a little bit about difficulty here. So I made a major mistake in this game. Apparently, I'm a moron. One of my friends was telling me the game even tells you right on the screen that this is what's going to happen when you ring this bell and take this item. So, okay, it's not really spoilers, but early on in the game, it's actually, well, really, you can actually encounter this way later in the game, but because I'm so, like, I take my time with these games, I explore every nook and cranny. I found this place really early on in the game. Before a lot of the major bosses, even. In fact, I'm pretty sure I found this thing before the Lady Butterfly fight, to give you an example. So there's this bell that you find throughout in the game, and before you ring it, there's like this message that says, I forget what it says. It's very cryptic, though. It's not like, it doesn't really spell it out for you, but it's basically, it mentions some like curse or whatever. So I rung this bell because why not? It's there. I have to. It's like you find this bell and you have the ability to ring it. Of course you're gonna ring it. Like I have to. Because of the way I play these games, I explore everything and do everything. I have to do it. So I rung this bell and it gives me this item. And I guess maybe I wasn't paying attention enough. Maybe I didn't actually read the item description or anything like that. But I think it might have said, something might have come up on the screen. I don't remember. It's hazy. I gotta go back to see what happens. But anyways, I looked at this item in the inventory and it mentioned like making the game harder in some way. So I was like, okay, I guess I got to use that item and then it will make the game harder. So it's like the one of those rings in Dark Souls, the Dark Souls games that make you take more damage or something like that. So okay, if I use that item in my inventory, it's gonna make the game harder, and that was it. That's what I thought it was. So I played through the entire rest of the game with this item in my inventory. And so I got all the way up to the final boss. I did every single mini-boss and boss in this game, except for the final boss, with this item in my inventory, which is when I discovered this crucial thing. So I go into the inventory, and I look at that item, I look at it again, I'm like, weird. This seems weird. Like, and also, okay, the other thing you have to remember, I'm going through this entire game, and I'm struggling. I'm struggling super hard. This first playthrough of Sekiro was 10 times harder for me than any playthrough of a Souls game. I was just like, oh my god, some of these bosses were taking me like crazy amount of attempts. Like the hardest boss for me in the game was probably geez, I don't know, all of them were so hard. Like these bosses were taking me like 30 attempts. It was absolutely fucking insane. Like I would just die so quickly. Enemies were doing so much damage to me. I was dying in 2 hits by everything. There was a certain boss later in the game that was one-shotting me even. I was doing no damage to these bosses. It was like, I was really fucking pulling my hair out. I was just like, this game is so fucking brutal. So anyways, eventually I discovered that this is me being, I guess, a complete moron, that this item in this inventory that I got from ringing the bell was actually giving me a hard mode curse. So the entire fucking game, I'd been taking more damage from enemies and doing less damage, and enemies and bosses had more health. So, yeah, I've been playing Sekiro on fucking hard mode the entire time. So, I gotta say, it kind of impacted my enjoyment in a way, unfortunately, because I think the game was just too fucking hard for me, that I would hit these brick walls, and I wanted to get back to the exploration, and it just, I don't know, it was draining. So... Anyways, at the very end of the game, I finally discovered I had this item on. I used the item in my inventory, and then the flashes on the screen, curse dispelled. And I noticed this little icon that was beneath my health bar the entire time. I didn't know what it was. I thought, I don't know. I didn't think to question it for some reason. It disappeared, and I was just like, fuck. It was one of the most. I don't think I've ever felt like such an idiot my entire life. Um, Now, I've read online, I'm not the only one to make this mistake. I think the biggest thing with me, I just assumed you had to use the item in the inventory, not that as long as you carried it, it had this curse on. I think that was the big thing that kind of fucked me up. So, yeah, so this game was way harder for me than any other person. So I was watching other people like not struggle at all with this game, and I was just like, what is going on here? Um, but I guess the good thing out of it is I did actually end up getting decent at the combat at least because playing New Game Plus, every single boss I was like one-shotting or two-shotting. So I guess it was like a trial by fire thing where I eventually had to learn the combat really well because every boss battle was this battle of attrition for me. But anyways, let's actually get into the combat at this point. So very aggressive combat. So the main difference here is it's a lot faster than the Souls game. You can run in this game. You have infinite stamina. Stamina is not a thing you have to worry about. You can jump in this game. So you have your kind of standard attacks. There's also a charged attack too with your sword. But blocking is a major part of this game. So you can block enemies regularly and you kind of block your attacks and you won't take damage, at least for most attacks. There's some fire attacks that might damage you or some poison attacks and things like that. But if you just hold the L1 button, you'll just keep blocking their attacks, essentially. And you can dodge in this game as well, but dodging is not really as effective in this game. But there are some attacks where dodging is going to be better. There are some bosses, in fact, where dodging is going to be a lot better than blocking. But you have, you can block a lot of attacks in this game. So the combat has like this a really amazing ebb and flow to it when you actually do get into it. Bosses are super aggressive in this game. They'll be on you constantly, and basically a big part of this game is posture. You and your bosses have a posture meter, and basically every time you attack them or especially parry them, their posture meter will fill. And if you play more defensively and keep backing off, that posture meter is going to reduce. It's going to go back to like 0, essentially. And you can basically attack enemies and kind of whittle down their health, or you can attack their posture meter, and their posture meter, when it completely fills up, they'll get into their death blow state, where you can do a death blow to them, and then they'll lose their health bar. So they might be at half health, and if you fill up their posture, you can actually take off all that health all at once. So reducing posture is actually really, in a lot of cases, your most effective tactic. And parrying is the name of the game in Sekiro. That's the way you're going to get posture up really quickly. And to parry, you basically just have to press L1 at the right time. Right as their attack is about to hit you, press L1. There'll be this flash, and their posture meter will go up like really quickly. And so a lot of this combat is figuring out what attacks you can parrying, getting the parrying timing down, knowing when to block, when to dodge, when to back off and heal, learning their attacks, learning their tells, and then honestly being really aggressive. Because being defensive in this game, it's one of the major things that really fucked me up with this game. And it's really the thing you gotta like throw away as far as your Souls playstyle. Souls playstyle is very much playing Dark Souls 3 again. It really is like this. It's, getting in there, getting your hits in, dodging the attacks, and then knowing when to back off and heal. Because you're always going to have a lot of the times you're going to have that opportunity to back off and heal. And if you're using like a magic build, kind of using your ranged attacks essentially. But in Sekiro, enemies and bosses are far more aggressive. They're going to be on you constantly, and if you're constantly backing off to heal, their posture meter is going to go down. So it's just going to make the fight take longer. And that's where the battles can feel like, they can feel like a battle of attrition sometimes. But when you do finally learn a boss's tells and their moves, and you're just right in your face, you're parrying constantly, you're dodging constantly, you're attacking constantly, you're taking down their posture extremely quickly. By the way, you also have to watch your posture too. The bosses and enemies, they can attack your posture. If you lose your posture, you get stunned for a bit, and then they can really go to town on you. And one of the reasons why I feel Sekiro is really difficult is just getting used to the way combat works and getting used to how aggressive things are. But the fact that enemies and bosses do so much damage to you in this game, basically every boss in this game is very easily able to two-shot you. And I feel like they designed around this in a way with the resurrect mechanic. This is another thing I forgot to mention. When you die, you can basically resurrect right on the spot. The thing is, you resurrect with half health, which means it's one shot away from death a lot of the times. But it does add, it does make you be a bit more liberal with your exploration and your combat. Essentially, and I think it basically the intent for it was to get you to be more aggressive and don't worry about because if you die, it's not immediately a failure. And there's ways to kind of increase your amount of resurrections too. You can use consumable items, and if you kill enough enemies or just spend enough time in the environments, your resurrect meter will increase. But you're immediately given a free resurrect every time you rest at a sculptor's idol. So that's this other thing in the game. It doesn't. I don't think it changes the game too much, but I think with the play style that this game has, it was kind of needed. If you just died and that was it, this game would be, oh man, it would be fucking brutal. I mean, it already is really fucking hard, but yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, getting used to the combat and how aggressive it is takes a while. But man, some of these boss fights, when you do eventually learn them and finally take them down, it's super satisfying, and the combat is really fun. I much prefer it to something like Neo, which I mean the combat was good in that game, but I feel like this is just a lot more satisfying. Uh, the one thing about this game though that does kind of bother me a bit, I like the final boss in this game. I think a lot of people praise the final boss. I kind of hate the final boss in this game. I think it's too long and it's too much. The final boss in this game has 4 phases, and there's one phase of it that like is so tedious to have to go through again every time that you want to learn the final boss. It's just he has like 4 health bars is I think just a little bit much. A lot of the enemies and bosses in this game I think have way too many health bars. And it just, I don't know, it became a little much for me. And this is one of those things From Software has been doing a lot lately. The Dark Souls DLC is the Dark Souls 3 DLC rather is the same kind of shit where a lot of these bosses are just like multiple phases, multiple health bars, and it's just I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like it feels like an artificial way to make things harder. It just makes things longer and just a little more tedious. So. I know, Sekiro, in a lot of ways, I feel like Sekiro and Dark Souls 3 and the DLC From Software, they're kind of like designing these games and thinking to themselves, how can we make this harder? Like, how can we make this game harder? And I don't feel that was ever the case with their older games, like with Demon Souls and Dark Souls. I just feel like the difficulty was a part of the game. It just happened to be a part of the game. But in a lot of ways, I feel like Sekiro, with a lot of these boss gimmicks especially, which I don't really want to spoil, there's a lot of like got you moments in this game and in Dark Souls 3 where it's just like I don't know, it's a little bit overkill for me. I don't know, but yeah, I do feel like this game was. I mean, okay, yes, I'll admit the hard mode, being a hard mode is a part of it, but even without that, I still think that first playthrough would still be really tough, especially once you've not gotten used to the combat quite yet. Because yeah, I died in this game like way more than any of the Souls games. Like some of these bosses, which boss took me the longest? Probably the second owl fight, I guess. The second owl father fight, like that, like I died like fucking 50 times. Like it was just insane. I've never died that much to a Dark Souls boss ever. Like like some of these bosses in this game make Ornstein and Smo look like a joke. The Dark Souls 3 DLC bosses are really tough though. I will admit that. That demon fight in the Dark Souls 3 DLC, the Ringed City, and the final boss of the Ariandel DLC is pretty fucking rough, but still nothing compared to some of the bosses in this game. And the final boss took me forever. Like the final boss is so fucking hard, and it's like it's one of those annoying things where his second and third phase are really tough to get the hang of, and it's like you have to go through these 2 phases every time you want a chance at that last phase. So it can be kind of annoying in that way, but the combat, when you do get used to it, it's really, it really feels great. It's really satisfying when you finally do take down a boss. It's got that amazing moment where you have that amazing moment of victory. But anyways, combat, definitely one of the highlights of the game for me as well. I think that's actually probably the game's biggest strength, and it's really fantastic with the regular enemies too. And parrying is a lot of fun as well. But anyways, that's a bit about it for gameplay, I think. Visuals, it's not like the environments are amazing. Like From Software continues to have some of the best art directors and art designers in the business. But like I was saying, the environments are definitely a lacking in variety. But I do like the verticality to them compared to the Souls games. But I don't know, the frame rate can be a bit spotty at times. I felt, at least on PS4, even on PS4 Pro, which was what I was on. I don't know. I don't think this game on a technical level it looks amazing. I don't think it's actually that much better looking than Bloodborne, to be honest. But I feel like From Software, they've never been like technical developers. Like on a technical level, the visuals in their games have never been like amazing or anything like that. But I think this game does lack the variety in locales compared to like the Souls games. Like it doesn't have a moment like Dark Souls 3 coming to the Ethereal of the Boreal Valley or Honor Londo in Dark Souls 1. There's nothing like that in Sekiro, but I still think the game looks fine. It looks fine. Um, the music, I don't know. The music didn't really grab me. I thought the music was kind of bland in this game. There was a few boss themes that were pretty intense and pretty appropriate, but I don't know. The music, yeah, it didn't do much for me. It's not like Dark Souls 1, where I think some of the music is like a highlight of the game. But this I don't know. It didn't like with the previous games though. There's not a lot of music to this game, and most of the game you're not playing with music, so it's not like a major component about in the game. Voice acting, interestingly enough, there's an English and Japanese track. Now, you got to go Japanese, though. The game does not feel right when you go with the English voice acting. I mean, the English voice acting is fine, but, like, it just doesn't fit the game when you're in this Japanese setting. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know why anyone play with English, but the voice acting in the game does seem good for what it is. Of course, I don't know any Japanese, so I don't know if the Japanese voice acting is good here, but it sounded good to me. At least I'm pretty sure. Um, I guess before I end up the review, kind of some of the other things about the game that kind of were annoying. The camera in this game can really fuck you up. When bosses can trap you in a corner, the camera gets stuck the camera gets stuck, and I've died a lot in this game because of it. The lock-on system can be finicky, especially with multiple enemies. I don't feel the combat works especially well with multiple enemies in this game. Kind of similar to the Souls games in a way, but I think far worse here because you can die so quick and because you really have to take your time with these encounters and parry them. When you're up against multiple enemies, it becomes a clusterfuck. And that's why one of the bosses that I don't really want. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a certain boss in this game that it just did not work for me because the multiple enemies thing. But yeah, the camera and lock-on system I thought were far more finicky in this game than the From Software's previous games. Because the combat is so demanding and because you can die so fast. And I know there's multiple times in this game where I died because of the lock-on system breaking or the camera getting stuck on things, and that's bullshit. That is bullshit, and I that's like artificial difficulty kind of shit. So there's a lot of deaths in this game I had that I thought were really cheap, which was really annoying. And actually, the boss that I struggled on the most was the final boss, but like not for the true ending, but the bad ending in this game. For whatever reason, people say this boss is easy, yet I fucking died like 50 times at it, but whatever. Anyways, aside from that, but yeah, that's Sekiro. I know, sorry, a long video, but you know me with the From Software games, there's just so much to cover here. Did I like the game? Yeah, I loved it. The first playthrough was phenomenal. I really did enjoy it, despite the game being like super fucking hard because of that hard mode item. I did play New Game Plus because you had to get the Platinum Trophy, and like with the Souls games, New Game Plus is just nowhere near as enjoyable. It just isn't. Like, you basically run through the environment super fast. The mini-bosses aren't worth fighting again because they don't give extra prayer beads or anything like that. The only thing that really... Like, everything carries over, but the only thing you can do in the game is increase your attack power further because you get the memories again. But some of the bosses, it was kind of satisfying to take down first try and second try, but because... Basically, the exploration is basically useless in the second playthrough. All the items you get are garbage. Like, you're not going to care about these consumable items or upgrade materials because you've probably gotten all the skills and upgrades you need and want by the time New Game Plus rolls around. And you can't really experiment with the new skills anyways because the skill points, it takes so many skill points. And when you kill a boss in New Game Plus, it gives you like half a skill point bar. Like, what the fuck is that? It's bullshit. It's stupid. Like at least give one skill point. I don't know. It's a little ridiculous, but yeah, New Game Plus, I honestly, other than fighting some of the bosses I missed the first time around, I didn't enjoy it like nowhere near as much. But the Souls games are kind of similar too. The Souls games, it's not as fun because you're using the same build as you did before. It's always more enjoyable in those games creating a new character and trying a new build. But with Sekiro, creating a new character is not going to be it's not going to be that much different, because again, this game is far more rigid than a Souls game is. So I got the Platinum Trophy. It was fucking irritating going for that skill point grind. But honestly, I loved my time with this game, but I don't see myself returning to this game in the way that I do the Souls games. It's too rigid. It's too lacking in the variety. As fun as that combat is, it's just it's not a game I'll probably ever return to again. But definitely still one of the best games of the year. I don't like it. I think it is From Software's my least favorite From Software game since the Demon Souls. But I think a lot of that does come down to preference. I am not going to argue that this is their weakest game. Because if you're into the combat, if you're into character action games, like this game is going to be like this godsend type experience for you. But for me, I like my RPG elements more. I like my exploration more, and my build, my variety, and things like that. So I'm always going to prefer that Souls experience. But interesting to see where they're going to go next from here. Because I definitely think this is a very different experience, but definitely worthwhile. I think even if you're a Souls fan and you like the same stuff that I do, I think this is still well worth playing. I think you're gonna find enough here to enjoy, and the combat is just like it's sublime. It's fantastic. Anyways, guys, did you play Sekiro? What do you guys think of it? That's it for now, and I'll see you next time.